Welcome to the Longevity Protocol with Dr. Cristina Bosch and Dr. John A. Robinson. We'll be your guides to uncovering the secrets to optimal health, better sex, and happiness. From debunking aging myths to exploring the science behind what it means to live the Longevity Protocol, we'll dive into a wide range of topics. So, get ready for an exhilarating journey in what it means to live well and feel your very best at any age.
Why so serious?
Well, I was going to say, why are you so cute?
I love it.
I mean, why does it just always start off that way for me?
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as I look at you, yeah, you're laughing, and I'm just thinking, you look cute. You look great.
Thanks, man.
I like this episode today. Maybe it could be because I'm a little bit tired to some degree. But sleep is really one of those really important hacks. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Oh, how are we calling sleep a hack? But okay, I'll let you get going.
We
just started. I'm already getting oppositional. Go ahead.
The catchphrase, the new fangled techie kind of catchphrase of some kind of hack that you have to figure out. Yeah, it's maybe a little bit of an obnoxious kind of term, at least for us. But it is something that's pivotal. It's something about lifestyle. We were saying before, it's not just health shouldn't be about a trend. It should be about a lifestyle. And that's certainly the case when it comes to sleep. I think it's important to mention how many different things sleep is actually helping with our health.
Yeah.
And really how it eludes so many people and so many patients that come to see us.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to know that part of the reason why people rely so much on hacks is because they're not sleeping well. So they feel like they need all of these other things to boost them up and pep them up. And the reality is, if we're not sleeping well and we're not regenerating and repairing and restoring, then longevity is very difficult to grasp.
People are always looking for like tricks and tips.
Yeah.
Tricks, tips, hacks.
My trick is sleep. My tip is do whatever you got to do to sleep. Now, I mean, we're making light of it, but obviously it's a whole episode. And sleep is challenging for both you and I for many reasons. And some of them are external, which it's important that we address, because sleep hygiene. I think over the years, actually, sleep hygiene is one of the things that I've had to spend time working on with patients the most. There's a lot of things that people don't realize they shouldn't do. I don't know if I'm jumping notes. You know how I always do that? But I will say that...
Well, let's talk about, might as well.
Okay.
That's really, frankly, where it starts. Then we can get into some of the things that we do in the strategies and hormones and various things that can certainly help. But it does start off with the basic hygienic thing. I mean, that's a kind of a fancy term for just saying, what are your habits?
What are your habits? Yeah. Well, for starters, the bed should be preserved for only two things: sleep and making love. Literally, just those two things. Every time people use the bed for reposing, I don't know if you say that in English like that, but for resting while they are awake, the bed is getting associated with being awake and reading or scrolling or working or anything that's keeping your brain stimulated. And that's actually very bad for the establishment of routine. And physiology is very dependent on routine. So I always say to people, it's okay if you're in your room because that's where you want to rest, but get a comfortable chair or find another place in the home where you can sit to do those things right before you go to bed. Do not lie in bed and do anything until except get ready to sleep.
Yeah. And get out of bed if you're going to have any kind of disturbance.
Correct.
Get out of bed.
That's huge.
And then if you need to work or you need to write something down because something's in your head, get out of bed and try to really limit it to sleep and sex only. I think another hack, another tip. I'm a huge component. You know how obsessed I am about keeping it as dark as possible. Making sure we've had to hunt for the right curtains.
Okay, we laugh about this because he's constantly, I'm going to use the word harass. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to say harassing me about the fact that the room isn't dark enough. And okay, fine. But one can use eye masks.
Yes, I'm not a fan. I mean, that's like a personal thing. You're right. I guess, I could just put the mask on, and I've tried it. And, personally, I don't like
your eyeballs hurt.
it just comes off. I don't know. I just don't like something on my face like
Yeah.
that. So, I mean, again, that's just me personally, but that would help it to some degree. Certainly earplugs is the same kind of
Right.
concept, although we don't really do that. To me, it's more about the light. And
Yeah.
there's plenty of research to show even the smallest amounts of light
hmm
can disturb sleep because it's starting to trigger the pineal gland. So now we're kind of speaking hormonally here. It's triggering the pineal gland and disrupting melatonin production. The moment the body, the eye, senses light, it turns off melatonin because
hmm
like, oh, well, it's morning, it's time to get up, so let's turn off melatonin production.
Right.
So that's where the screen
It
time
sends
and all those things.
right.
Correct.
And if you're having, and you have light in your room, this is, and this can be like light from the alarm clock,
Yes.
light from your cell phone. I mean, having your cell phone next to your bed.
Yeah.
Maybe we're jumping around too much. All right, let me go back to just what we were saying to summarize as we go, okay? Because that's, my brain is a bullet thinker. Number one, we were saying when we're talking about sleep hygiene, making sure that the room is very, very dark. Number two is save the bed only for sleep and sex.
hmm
Okay. And then you were saying about the room being really dark, you're talking about like curtains, for some people, sleep
Yeah, I mean,
masks.
if there's windows, you've got to eliminate all that light. Eliminating light from a clock, like you're saying. I mean, it
Yeah.
could be anything that's going to bring in that extraneous light.
Yeah.
You've got to keep it as dark as possible.
And this is true for kids too, because I think parents have a tendency to want to use night lights for their
Mm-mm.
children, but actually it's very bad for children's sleep.
It's not just bad for their sleep; it's actually bad for their eyesight. So there's research to show that if there's a frequent use of these night lights, it actually causes nearsightedness, inability to see at a distance.
Right.
So yeah,
And there's some correlation of children being a little bit more anxious, especially anxious in the dark. So one of the things that is recommended is to get children and adults comfortable with sitting in the dark, even when they're awake, and letting their eyes get used to seeing in the complete dark. And that's good for eyesight. It's also good for resetting the brain. And it does help train the brain to kind of slow down and shut down in the dark.
yeah, that's a good point too. And it made me think just about sleep in general. And this is what I always say to patients. One, you have to prepare for sleep,
Yeah.
but you also need energy to sleep. That's what's always kind of strange when we think about the idea of just, well, I'm exhausted, so shouldn't I be able to just put my head on the pillow and pass out because I'm so tired?
Right.
So if there's metabolic disturbances, then it's difficult to sleep. Thyroid issues, low testosterone and estrogen actually can cause a lack of metabolic energy to allow you to capture REM.
Mhm.
There, I might be jumping around a little bit, but I think we're establishing the hygiene
Yeah.
concepts, and there's maybe other things.
Just a question about though, when you say that about energy, you don't mean that the person should go to sleep when they feel fully energized. You're talking about metabolic energy, like physiologic health for the purposes of restoration.
It's that, but it's also the idea of pure exhaustion is not what we're looking
I
for.
see.
You have to enter into sleep is an active
Mm,
process.
mhm.
So we don't want to be a complete, exhaustion kind of concept in order to
Interesting.
get there. And a lot of times people think that's what it is, or they think if they're exhausted, shouldn't they just be able to sleep easily?
That's interesting. I'm not sure that I've ever considered that component, but I have over the years said to people who have difficulty sleeping, part of the reason most of my patients and myself will have difficulty sleeping will be because of that freight train brain, like the brain that just doesn't shut down. And I've always recommended it's important that you exercise during the day so that your physical body can help balance out the brain usage. So you want to use your body in a parallel fashion to the way you use your brain. And I always explained how that actually restores peace in the brain.
Mhm.
I never thought about it from the way you're describing that what it is really doing is preventing the brain from being so exhausted that it can't relax.
Yeah, and I love the correlation there to exercise, and we absolutely have to make sure we're
hmm
exercising in order to. Yeah, I think it's a good analogy, or just truthful that you have to exhaust your body
Yeah.
to some degree. And we know again, this research is pretty clear. Common sense is pretty clear. If you're exercising, you're going to sleep better, and
Yeah.
that's true. Let's maybe switch and talk a little bit about sleep and longevity. I mean, how is this affecting, like, why does it matter? I mean, why is it so important? And what's the amount of time? How much should
Uh-huh.
somebody be sleeping? And I think that, well, let's talk about the time first. That whole 7 to 9 hour concept is pretty consistent in the research. Again, pretty consistent from a
I
practical
think
common sense.
anecdotally that
Yeah,
would be what most people report.
sure. And when you're starting to get under 7 or certainly over 9, too much sleep, there's diminishing returns, and not enough is obviously not good. But everybody's wired a little bit
Yeah,
differently,
yeah.
and I think that there's always the outliers. So 7 to 9 is a good concept to figure this sort of center of the bell curve, but there's always going to be outliers that maybe can get more sleep and they're going to be fine, and some people can certainly get away with less. But generally speaking, you need that 7 to 9.
Yeah. And I would propose for the people that feel like they need more sleep that it's never good to oversleep. There's this concept in homeopathic medicine where they say you sleep into an aggravation, which is so true for any of those like weekend warrior sleepers where they decide I can't imagine.
I can't do it.
Can't imagine doing this nowadays. But even when I was younger, I think it was challenging. But, they say, oh, I slept in until 9, 10, 11. They
Yeah,
slept in
I got
until
12 hours. I
11.
got 14 hours of sleep.
But
Yeah.
you wake up and you're a little groggy. And that's because actually you've aggravated the system by sleeping so many hours consecutively. I always tell the patient, I'm like, look, get up, do something in the morning that's part of your regular routine. Drink some water, move around, get some sort of a task done. Even if you take a mid-morning nap, even if you go back to bed, no problem, but don't stay sleeping those extra hours because those extra hours have been shown to not be restorative.
Well, since you said we're talking about extra hours and you just said naps, I think naps are important to talk about because naps are, again, a little bit,
Delicious.
you love naps.
I do. I really do.
Well, what's interesting about that too, from a cultural standpoint, the idea of the siesta and
Yeah.
those kind of things, these have to be considered, and they are considered in the research and trying to determine, is a nap beneficial or not, and what's the length of the nap in order to be beneficial. Things like for your health, for cardiovascular, like take that for an example. Cardiovascular health has actually been shown to improve with naps, but once you get over about an hour, there's research to show that it actually is detrimental to
Yeah.
cardiovascular.
Again, you sleep into an aggravation.
Mm.
So it's always about the sweet spot. I mean, that's the thing about, we've mentioned this on other episodes. That's the thing about the laws of nature. The laws of nature are the laws of health, and too much or too little is
Yeah.
rarely the right answer.
Yeah, that balance for sure.
And
So
and there's also there's a cultural component to that, but the culture often reflects the geographic environment. So you think about places that are extremely hot in the middle of the day. It's very common for life to start early when the sun comes up, and then there's that reprieve in the middle of the day because it's more dangerous to be outside because of the heat, right? So those cultures are going to be more prone to napping. And then the opposite would be true when you have those winter climates. You're not really napping in the middle of the day because there's such a short amount of sunlight. So if you're following the rhythm of the sun, that's often a really good indicator as well of what your sleep should look like.
yeah, and that's obviously not always practical for people. So should they, if they're in a situation where those things aren't able to be honored, what should they do? Should they
Yeah.
nap? And really, the answer is yes. When you can try to get it in, and even short naps can be beneficial. Again, this is a little bit controversial, at least in my research about the research, that really short naps sometimes could be argued that weren't as good, too long. I think no matter what, generally speaking, if you're able to get an extra nap in, it's a good idea.
Yeah. And I think we've mentioned this before, but I think one of the things we want our listeners to really understand is that they need to continuously increase their self-awareness, like actually listen to your body, listen to the cues. If you're tired in the middle of the day, like it's pretty much clockwork that at 1 p.m. I get sleepy. And I don't mean like pathologic, my lunch was too big sleepy. No, I mean like my entire system starts to shut down a little bit as if my battery pack was removed. And usually it's just a moment of rest. If I can take those 20 to 30 minutes to have some genuine rest, that's very important. What will I often be doing? Pushing through that, eating while I work, etc.
Or using maybe caffeine.
Or
So,
I mean, I don't do that, but a lot of people do
mhm.
that. And that's ignoring your body's cues. So it has been one of my goals really since the beginning of last year to become more in tune with my sleep signals in the middle of the day. I don't have the luxury of taking a sleep, but I have been much more respectful of resting again for those 20 minutes around that 1 p.m. And it has made a difference. I've noticed that it keeps me a lot more alert for the afternoon.
So should someone use, or let's talk about caffeine. I was kind of trying to segue a little bit there in terms of what are some, people ask about that. How does that affect ultimately sleep? We're obviously trying to get energy, but what is it doing ultimately for sleep? And if there is an excessive amount of caffeine, and particularly past, depending on how fast somebody metabolizes caffeine, particularly past, 2, 3 o'clock,
Right.
for a lot of people, that's going to ultimately disturb their sleep later on. And that's because of the clearance of caffeine. It really takes, on average, actually about 12 hours to clear it out,
Yeah.
at least. So that idea of using it in the morning, that is going to be okay for even for a lot of people, even at lunchtime, having tea or whatever. I've certainly learned that about myself. I was able to, when I was younger, use caffeine, like tea or something like that at lunch. But if I did that, it would ramp me up too much
Yeah.
later on. So
Yeah.
caffeine in the morning for me works good and doesn't seem to disturb my sleep then
Mhm.
ultimately.
The thing with caffeine for me also is that there's several reasons why I don't want people relying, or even if they're not relying on it, like let's say they're not using it because they're like, oh, I need coffee to stay awake. No, they just have the habit of having that midday coffee or iced tea because Arizona's like a huge iced tea
Yeah.
culture, right? Iced tea, fine. But here's the thing about the coffee drink that most of these people are reaching for. They're also having coffee drinks. They're not sitting there having their little espresso at the cafe while they people watch. They're
Mhm.
inhaling their venti filled with empty calories and toxic ingredients. And it's so bad for the adrenals. It's so bad for visceral fat. It's so bad for overstimulation. It's bad for neurotransmitters. So they're like with everything. I guess I always joke and I say, you want to listen to us and get your black and white answers, but
Sure.
I just don't live in a black and white world. I'm thinking about the spectrum of habits. And I think if we think about the spectrum of habits, then people are going to be much more successful in finding a routine that works for them.
Mhm.
So that afternoon coffee, especially if it's a mixed coffee drink, is one of the number one things, hands down, I think people can do. Eliminate that, even if it means start by eliminating that to help with their evening sleep, to help with their belly fat, and to help just normalize hormones.
We went to Vienna. We went to Austria. Um, '06. It was right at the tail end of school for us. What an amazing trip. And at that time, I had only just started drinking coffee. I made it all through undergrad, through really the majority of medical school, and I just never drank coffee. I wasn't a coffee drinker.
Right.
I'd have tea for sure. It comes sort of from a culture of that. But even then, it wasn't like I was using the tea for the caffeine
Hmm.
to get through studying and all. That just wasn't my thing. I mean, it really wasn't until I sort of met you and some of the other students, some of your other girlfriends
Right.
within medical school that I went, oh, okay, let me try this coffee thing. Anyway, by the time we got to the end of school, we go to Austria and we sat and I drank coffee there and it was sitting and it was relaxed
Correct.
and I just didn't feel jacked up from it. We were kind of going from cafe to cafe in the middle of the winter, and it was just wonderful. And it could be argued as well, not just the fact that it was this relaxing setting, which I think that was a huge part of it, the style of how they, the idea
Yes.
of the fast concept of coffee there just was largely foreign. But the other thing is that it could be how they're producing
Yes.
the coffee bean, and over the years I've learned that.
Yeah. And they weren't giving us mocha lattes. We were having high
Right.
quality coffee
Mhm.
with perhaps some cream.
Mhm.
And just so that listeners know, when I say I know from experience, I remember my relationship with coffee and tea is much like my relationship with alcohol. I enjoy the flavors of what I'm drinking. I'm not really drinking coffee as a pick me up. That's never been my relationship with coffee. In college, I remember I would put so much sugar in my coffee that I'd have to like stick my
to get the
tongue to the
last
top of
oh, good
and
Lord.
it would be that like delicious coffee flavored sugar at the bottom. When you put so much sugar in your coffee it doesn't dissolve. Like that was a meal.
That's not my
And it was
bag,
so
baby.
delicious. Well, no, now I can't stand sweetened coffee. But what I did was I had awareness. I was like, maybe this isn't that's so good. Maybe this isn't a good idea. And little by little, I taught myself to enjoy the coffee again without the sugar, to the point that now I don't like it. I do think that's part of what made you a fan in Austria, was that the quality of what you were drinking,
Yeah.
the taste, and it was just an undeniable experience of pleasure.
And that's what I've done now. I've kind of translated that forward and figured out, my ritual for my morning cup of coffee, my sort of rocket fuel, you'd call it, but I'm using Life Boost. Encourage everyone to check that out. It is uh, low acid. It's shade grown beans, where it's low acid. It's obviously organic. It's mold free because it's tested for mold. And just super high quality.
Yeah.
And it's dark. I drink it black, and I add a little bit of cacao.
Right.
Yeah.
And why? Because
The cacao actually balances out some of the negative jittery effects that people can get from caffeine. Plus magnesium, which, first of all, coffee has a lot of magnesium, and pure cacao does as well. And it just balances out neurotransmitters better with that, let's say, stimulation you're getting out of it. And it's just a more balanced effect. So it's that, and that's, I do it as a ritual first thing in the morning. It's French press. It winds up being, for me, really good, and I feel like that's a health.
Well, there are health benefits.
habit.
Right, that's right. That's what I was going to say. There's health benefits to black coffee. There really are, but you want to be mindful of the quality of the coffee that you're buying, and I do find that Arabica beans are going to, for most people, be less jittering.
For most people.
Yeah.
You had also mentioned alcohol. And I think it's important. We're spending some time here on caffeine because obviously, and coffee and these things, because it's so important to so many people, but that's affecting sleep. The other question is, well, what does alcohol do? Does alcohol help with your sleep? And really the answer is no. It can give you that immediate depressant effect, but ultimately it's lowering blood sugar, which has a whole lot to do with disturbing your sleep just in general. That's the other hygienic kind of concept that we'll say, to make sure blood sugar is not too low in the middle of the night.
Right.
So for a lot of patients, we just simply tell them to eat fat and protein right before bed. Keep the carbs down, but fat and protein right before bed. And that can usually get them past that 1 to 2 a.m. low blood sugar issue. But alcohol just exacerbates that.
I just want to pause on that because I think that's an extremely important point for sleep hygiene. One of the main reasons why people will have disturbed sleep will be because they get low blood sugar in the middle of the night. And those people will often find that they're waking up, I would say, between 1:30 and 3:30. So you get sleep disturbance. I always ask the person, do you sleep through the whole night? Well, no, I get up to go to the bathroom. And I say, okay, but is the need to get up to go to the bathroom what is awaking you? Or do you wake up and then notice you have to go to the bathroom? If the need to go to the bathroom is what's awakening you, then usually those people get up, they go to the bathroom, they go in bed, and they fall asleep right back, and it's not a big sleep disturbance. It's the other scenario, the scenario where you wake up and then suddenly you're like, oh, I have to go to the bathroom. You go to the bathroom, you get back in bed, you can't fall asleep. So I think one of the easiest things that you can do for yourself, and for most people this works, is have that pre-bedtime snack. So 30 to 60 minutes before bed, having, as you were saying, something fat and protein, some sort of a bolus. I like to do, especially in the winter, I like to do protein powder, like a chocolate protein powder with some raw milk or a little bit of cream and some cinnamon, which is also a blood sugar regulator, nutmeg. All of those herbs are nervines. They help with the relaxation, and then it helps with sleep. If you don't want anything sweet, bone broth. Bone broth is another great option. You can put a little bit of extra olive oil in that. You can put some collagen. Collagen and creatine are great for sleep too. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure we paused on that because that's an extremely useful tidbit for sleep quality.
Yeah, that's definitely a hack.
Yeah, that is a hack. Yeah. But you were saying about alcohol.
Since you segued, I got to segue to your segue. and explain what I do with my patients. So
Okay.
I definitely have them do peanut butter and butter,
Oh, yeah.
peanut butter and butter. And you take a tablespoon of each and mix it together. It's really makes it extra creamy. And you're getting that butter in and all the short chain fatty acids, all the other benefits of that keeps the blood sugar
Right.
regulated. That's what's happening. The blood sugar goes down, then adrenaline kicks in order to try to bring your blood sugar back up. And so for patients that are waking up in the middle of the night and they say, yes, now I have to go to the bathroom, one, they're awake, but also the adrenaline makes you actually want to urinate. It actually stimulates what's going on there. And it kind of makes you want to pee at that point. So it's like a double whammy.
Right.
Yeah.
And those people are also a little easier to define because when you ask them, do you wake up refreshed? The answer is no. And it seems to be that they're unrefreshed regardless of how much sleep they do get.
Okay. Back to the alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it's time. We're tying that back into the low blood sugar.
Correct.
As well.
Yeah.
That's really one of the big reasons why people wake up. It's really not doing good things to the blood sugar several hours
Right.
away from drinking it. So you get that, maybe that it'll calm you down
Yeah,
a
that's
little
right.
bit, but you're going to pay for it unless everything's kind of
Mm.
balanced out. And of course, it always comes down to the amount.
Correct. Always is the quantity.
So is sleep helping with our longevity? Is it helping with our lifespan, our health span? And, we've got a note here about the blue zones. And in the blue zones, we definitely know that sleep quality was part of it. So what are the blue zones? These areas in the world where there's high concentrations of centenarians, people who live 100 or more. And this is scattered throughout the world.
Mm-hmm.
One, interestingly, is right in California. But, Okinawa, we've talked about this before. And definitely, sleep is a key part to what's going on having the proper rhythm. I think that's the other thing too, back to what you had said before, just about um, rhythms of what's going on in the environment. There's just following
Follow the rhythm.
the rhythm of the
the
seasons.
rules of nature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting discussion about sleep when we think about, well, what are the real life and the practical disturbances to people? Is it a question of the fact that they drank too much, or a question of they're not exercising enough? They have too much on their mind. And some of it is just that there's not enough time in the day to do everything that you need to do. There's limitations, and the person will say, well, if I wake up earlier, if I wake up an hour earlier, then I can get my workout in. Or do I stay in bed and sleep a little bit more? And that's actually a very good question. So how would you answer that? If you have the patient who says, okay, the best time for me to work out is at 5 a.m. So I have to wake up at 5 a.m. But that means they're only getting 6 to 7 hours of sleep. What would you say to that?
I'd say workout.
You would say workout.
I would. And then also because they're not going to work out. Well, they're saying every single day, but most of the time with workout, we're going to say on average is around 3 times a week. So 3 times a week, that's what they're doing. They're getting far more benefit out of the consistency of that workout than, let's say, robbing themselves
of that.
Yeah. Here, since you said that, you can actually improve your energy with a workout, even though you just had low sleep.
Right.
So you can push past that. I wouldn't recommend doing this all the time, but the point is that if you're like, wow, I just didn't sleep well, I'm not refreshed. Exercise will actually help to push that out and make you more energized.
I know people always say that, and I know the research is very consistent with that, but I'm going to call bullshit. I'm going to say that's only true after 3 weeks of really sticking to it. So the person has to be aware that they're not going to feel some might. But I think a lot of people are just not going to feel well until after they've had enough oomph to get through those first 3 weeks of adaptation.
Yeah, right. There's another, what's that? That's not a hack. We'll call that a cheat code.
Okay.
So yeah, you can only cheat code so many times.
Yeah.
With a lot of these things, it makes me think of, and I think I had done a video on this, on can you out exercise, a really crappy diet?
Right.
And really in the end, the answer is no. However, I want to put a however on that. When it comes to CrossFit, the people who compete in CrossFit, and I've watched some documentaries with that. I understand the way they eat. When they're in the middle of their competition, they're eating like shit.
Meaning quality?
Oh, quality, quantity. You just can't even imagine.
Because they're eating a lot?
They're eating because they have to.
Yeah.
And if they didn't, it wouldn't do well. I mean, they're eating pizza and Taco Bell, like just
Well,
whatever.
that's like bodybuilders, right?
Yeah, a little different depending on what they're doing. If they're trying to, cut for a competition and bring down fat. But we're just talking about energy expenditure. Can those CrossFitters kind of out-exercise that crappy diet? Actually, they can.
Okay, fine, but that's not longevity.
I know. I'm bringing it up as a caveat.
I mean, that's actually a great topic that perhaps we should write down, because I think it's important for people to understand the difference between calorie deprivation for a specific goal versus calorie deprivation for life. Right. And also fitness for a specific goal versus fitness for longevity. Because let me tell you, those are two very different types of workouts.
Yes.
But I like your answer about the sleep. Your point is, how many times a week are you depriving yourself of that sleep? You're saying 3 times a week, maybe 4. So that's 3 to 4 times a week that you're depriving yourself of sleep. That's a good answer. I think mine's probably an amalgam. I would say that I like your answer, and that would be my first comment to the person. My second comment, and I take this advice for myself, is that if you are listening to your body, really listening, not like, oh, I don't feel like it. That's not listening to your body. If you're listening to your body, then after some time, robbing the sleep when your quality of sleep is bad to begin with, I think can be detrimental. So if you have good sleep, if you are a person who in general sleeps well and wakes up refreshed, then by all means, wake up and do the exercise for sure. 3 to 4 times a week. It's the right answer. If you are a person who already has bad sleep, then maybe you're still waking up to do the exercise, but the type of exercise has to be restorative. This is where I would say, then walk or do some yin yoga that I talk about all the time. Do something do deep stretching, because you're still getting in movement and you're still giving yourself the health benefit of exercise. But if you're run down because your sleep isn't good and you run empty, doing a hard workout doesn't help. What do you think?
Balance is usually the key, and I agree with what you're saying there.
Okay.
Sold. What else can people do for their sleep? Let's talk about hormones real quick.
Please.
Ultimately, for a lot of people, their hormones, when they are disturbed, when they are low, they're having levels of deficiency, sleep quality gets disturbed. Mm-hmm. And certainly when it comes to, let's talk about women and menopause, estrogen is just such an important hormone to focus in on neurochemistry, so you can have REM sleep, you can hold on to sleep, and it's just so common to see it in menopause. So we'll give estrogen and
progesterone.
Progesterone is probably one of the best. Mm-hmm. It stimulates the benzodiazepine receptor. It's like a benzo. It can be quite potent and hypnotic for a lot of women. So a little bit of estrogen and progesterone can go a long way for sleep.
Yeah. And of course, my number one thing is get your adrenal function test. Mm. I think doing a salivary adrenal test, which is 4 readings, often called an adrenal stress index, 4 collections of saliva within a given day is my favorite way to test it, our favorite way to test it. It's going to give you a sense of how your cortisol is being produced, because if you are overproducing cortisol later in the day, then you are going to have a much harder chance sleeping well.
That's usually what we see. The overall amount of cortisol is reasonable. They're producing it. They're just producing it.
It's dysfunctional.
Yeah. So it's low in the morning when it should be high. Mm-hmm. It's high at night when it should be low. And there's strategies to be able to help with that, certain herbal strategies that, I'll give another tip, hack, suggestion here. We've been using something called Cortisol Manager for years. That one of the key things is phosphatidylserine, some other usual suspects, but magnolia is in it. And when magnolia is used in a high quality, and it's been standardized in a particular way, mm-hmm. it will have a certain potency to it that has a certain amount of the active ingredients in it. So whenever we're talking about any of these supplements, where I was saying, physician grade, high quality, standardized, and that's where you're going to get the medicinal effects. Right. So with the Magnolia that's in this cortisol manager is really, really good. But we've also come across something that's even more potent than that. So the active ingredient within Magnolia is called honokiol, Honokiol. I believe I'm pronouncing that right.
I like that word because it reminds
Honokiol.
me of something from Hawaii.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And maybe it
Honokiol.
is.
Ha.
I mean,
Yeah. Yes. Anyway, honokiol, it's a certain hydrolyzed version of this, and it's 20 times as potent as Magnolia, as standardized Magnolia, which
right.
is already really good. Again, we've been using that for years. So this honokiol has kind of taken things to the next level for patients who are really, really needing that. I've personally taken it. It's pretty effective.
Yeah.
One pill kind of goes a long way for really relaxing you through sleep. So
Yep.
there's a definite option for people if they could find it. We certainly have.
Right, because even though I'm making fun of this idea of hacks, I mean, I'll be the first one to say that a lot of times you need an aid or like, a Band-Aid to help get you through the repair. I give the analogy a lot of times, like you broke your foot and you're not going to use the crutches. That doesn't make any sense. You still need to move around. So
yeah,
yes,
you're going to say the crutches aren't natural.
right,
I'm not
that's
supposed
right.
to use crutches.
Or the
when I
crutches
walk.
don't fix the bone. Well, kinda. I mean, they do because they give the bone an opportunity to rest. So this is also true of these products. Even though I'm, cheeky and saying, life hacks, whatever. But yes, use the aids that you need them. They're not the problem. The problem is using them in lieu of actually addressing the underlying reasons why the person is having symptoms or disease in the first place.
Right. Like just maybe as simple as poor sleep hygiene. So we're kind of full circle there.
Yeah.
So yes, the aids are there, the hormones, these things are important. As we always do, everything's a comprehensive approach on what we do.
Yeah.
With everything with a patient. You just can't, their symptoms, their condition, their being is not within a vacuum. It's got all these other aspects to it. And you need to work with someone that's going to talk about all of those things and put together a comprehensive plan.
I'd like to say something about that, about the signs and symptoms of low sleep, because I don't think we have it in our notes. And I want to make sure I mention, people think, oh, I know when I don't have enough sleep, the symptom is I'm sleepy. But it could be migraines. It could be low back pain. It could be the other hormones stop working well. It could be weight gain. It could be halitosis, which is bad smell in the mouth.
Indigestion.
I mean, the list of symptoms that you may not directly be correlating to your bad sleep is really long.
Yeah, memory and focus.
Irritability, anxiety. And this is important because people will say, well, I don't sleep well, and I have this, and I have that. And then I would say, wait, maybe you have this and that because you don't sleep well. So that's important when you're thinking about your own health, when you're communicating with your practitioner, to remember that the body functions as a whole. So you don't necessarily need to treat the system independently if you're not also treating it as a whole.
Well said.
Gracias. What else?
I think I think we have covered it.
Yeah, we can have put more stuff in the notes because I can talk about sleep all day long and
I think that would just make me sleepy.
Of it.
So I don't know about that.
All right. Well, either way, there's more to be said. There's always more to be said. I think this was a great summary.
I think we covered.
Do you want to do your recap? I think you've got some nice takeaways here that maybe you can summarize and of course reach out if you have more questions. Summary?
I think sleep is obviously a foundation for our health, for overall performance, and certainly for longevity. You'll live longer if you sleep better. Yes, you can't. These supplements and these strategies are helpful. They are aids, but they're only going to work so well. But little bits of improvements with your sleep, taking some of this advice that we're talking about today, even a little bit, if you're getting an extra 15, 30, 60 minutes a day,
right,
that in turn can be helpful. And make sure you're just prioritizing it ultimately. And nap whenever you can.
I think that's great. I leave you with one thought, which is if you're having unsatisfactory or dissatisfactory sleep, then take a minute to analyze your habits. What are you doing before bed? What is your sleep like? And what are you doing upon rising? And that will give you a lot of information on areas that you should start to improve. Reference our notes as needed. Good.
Well said.
All right. Thanks.
Are you liking what you're hearing? Do you want to hear more?
Are you loving this great content and do you want to ask us a question?
Please like, subscribe, and comment.
You can find all of our links on our social media, featured articles, basically everything we cover at Linktree at Longevity Protocol Pod.
And if you want to understand and hear a little bit more about our personal lives, follow us on Instagram at The Sex Docs.
Here's where you can comment and ask questions that we will directly answer in our videos.
Be sure to subscribe to our Substack. This is where we get far more information for you, protocols on longevity and health, and definitely the notes for today's episode.
And finally, if you're ready to make a change, a real change in your own life, feel free to check us out at our private practice at hormone-zone.com.